Marvel's Wolverine is one of those games that feels easy to trust before it even comes out. It is being made by Insomniac, it is backed by PlayStation, and it is based on a character who already feels perfect for a darker action game. But I do not think Wolverine should be treated like an automatic win. After Spider-Man 2, Insomniac is in a different position now. The studio still has a lot of trust when it comes to polish, gameplay, movement, and big superhero moments, but there are also fair questions about story focus, replay value, and whether their superhero formula is starting to feel a little too safe.
That is why Wolverine matters. This game does not just need to be good. It needs to prove that Insomniac can still build a superhero game around the actual identity of the character, instead of making another polished Marvel game that feels familiar after a few hours. And with Wolverine, that difference is important, because Logan is not Spider-Man. Spider-Man is about movement, speed, style, responsibility, and the pressure of trying to save everyone. Wolverine is something else entirely. Wolverine is pain, violence, memory, guilt, rage, survival, and a man who has spent most of his life being turned into a weapon. So if this game only understands the claws and the brutality, then it is only understanding the surface of the character. That is my biggest concern with Marvel's Wolverine. The game can have blood, finishers, heavy combat, and brutal boss fights, and all of that is important. But if it does not have the emotional weight behind it, then it could easily become a fun action game that does not fully respect why Wolverine works. Logan has some of the best stories in Marvel Comics. His character is not interesting only because he can heal or because he can kill people. He's interesting because he keeps surviving things that should have destroyed him, and every time he survives, he carries more damage with him. If Insomniac gets that right, then the violence will actually mean something. Every fight will feel like it is coming from a character, not just from a combat system. And that is where Spider-Man 2 becomes relevant. Spider-Man 2 had great gameplay, great moments, and some really strong ideas. But for a lot of people, the issue was that the game had so many moving parts that some of those ideas did not get enough room to breathe. Peter, Miles, Harry, Venom, Kraven, Norman, and the next game's setup were all fighting for space. There was a lot happening, and I do not think Wolverine can afford that same problem. A Wolverine game does not need 10 different characters fighting for emotional space. It needs a focused story about Logan, his past, and the people or systems trying to turn him into a weapon again. That does not mean the X-Men should be ignored. Wolverine without that world can feel incomplete. A Charles Xavier scene could work, and a small X-Men tease could work if it feels earned. But the main story cannot become a trailer for the next game. The wider universe can exist, but it should not overpower Logan's story. If the biggest conversation after release is only about which cameo showed up, then something went wrong. This needs to feel like Wolverine's game first. And that also applies to the gameplay. Wolverine cannot feel like Spider-Man with claws. The combat has to feel heavier, more personal, and more dangerous. When Logan fights, it should not feel clean or overly stylish in the same way Spider-Man does. It should feel rough. It should feel desperate. It should feel like every enemy in the room made a very bad decision by standing in front of him. But at the same time, the combat still needs depth. If the whole game is just basic slashing, finishers, and rage mode, it might look cool in trailers, but it will not carry a full game. Wolverine needs a combat system that rewards timing, aggression, healing, positioning, and maybe even restraint. The player should feel powerful, but not brainless. The same thing goes for the world design. If this game is more semi-open than fully open world, that could honestly be a good thing. Wolverine does not need a giant map filled with random icons. He needs locations that feel personal. Madripoor should not just be a cool neon area. Canada should not just be snow and trees. Every location should connect to Logan's history, his enemies, or the people who know what he used to be. Smaller areas can work if they have purpose, but empty space and basic side activities will not be enough. And then there are the boss fights, which might be one of the biggest opportunities for this game. A Sentinel fight already tells us Insomniac understands the scale people want. But the best boss fights in Wolverine should not just be big, they should feel personal. Sabretooth should not just be another enemy with a health bar. He should feel like someone who understands the ugliest parts of Logan better than anyone else. The goal should not only be spectacle, the goal should be memory. That is why I keep coming back to one point. Wolverine has to feel specific. Specific in combat, specific in story, specific in tone, and specific in emotion. Because if this game gets all of that right, then it does more than just give PlayStation another big exclusive. It rebuilds confidence in Insomniac's superhero formula before Spider-Man 3. But if Wolverine feels too safe, too clean, or too familiar, then it could expose a bigger problem. Maybe the issue is not Spider-Man 3. Maybe the issue is that Insomniac's Marvel games are becoming a formula, and Wolverine is the first real test of whether that formula can still evolve. I still trust Insomniac. I think they are one of the few studios that can actually pull this off. But trust is not the same thing as a free pass. Wolverine needs to be brutal. Yes, it needs strong combat, memorable bosses, and a world worth exploring. But more than anything, it needs to understand Logan. Because if Insomniac only makes Wolverine cool, the game will probably be fun. But if they make him human, damaged, violent, emotional, and respected as a character, then this could be one of the most important superhero games they have ever made. And that is why Marvel's Wolverine matters so much. It is not just the next Insomniac game. It is the game that tells us whether Insomniac can still change the formula before Spider-Man 3.